Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Ephrata Community Church Weekly Podcast, a conversation with our pastors and leaders meant to continue encouraging you to know God, know freedom, know purpose, and make a difference.
Hey, Ephrata Community Church, welcome to our weekly podcast where we like to take time to process what God did in the weekend services we just experienced, as well as look ahead to what God is doing and really touch base on a lot of the fun inner workings of ECC life.
Yeah,
and
it was a busy week.
It was. It's good to have you on again.
Thank you.
Speaking of busy week, if you were at our weekend services this past weekend, you would have seen the spotlight shining in on the kids ministry. Last week we had kids camp, and it's always a really beautiful part of the annual ECC calendar. And 386 kids.
Yep.
Pastor Laura, as well as her amazing team, just pulled it off once again. My kids were involved. Your kids were involved. Aaron was helping to orchestrate the whole thing as well.
She was doing all the snacks for everybody, and then I had a daughter leading a kindergarten group, and then my other three kids participating in.
Yeah, so it was a whole Burr family affair. Yeah, and were you guys here on Friday as well?
Yeah.
Were you here? That's another question, because I know they would have been. But it was fun, myself, my wife, to be here on Friday to watch them do the, they sing their worship, and then they do the skit. What they had a name for it?
It's like Bible storybook.
Yeah.
Storybook theater.
The storybook theater.
Or Living Bible.
It was, for me, just watching, it was pure enjoyment.
Yeah.
And just the way they acted it out. And I couldn't help but sit there and think, I don't know why we don't have this for the lineup of the weekend services. Like this should be the preaching of the word for the weekend.
We could do that.
And
get everybody involved.
It was hilarious. It was cute. It was fun. And of course, all the kids are learning about Jesus, and it's being done in such a way that it makes it just real. And, just young people, it's not the right word, little children, all ages, experiencing God's love. In fact, there's some statistics that Laura shared. I'll punt it over to you. I want to hear your reflections. Just 47 children, I think, giving their lives to Jesus.
47 children making a decision to follow Jesus. And also I want to thank, I think it was 180 plus people from ECC as serve team, pulling it off and making it happen. So Laura and her team are amazing, but they really rely on the entire congregation to make it happen. And we saw so many people help out in tons of different ways. And I think Kevin mentioned it from the front. Some people even taking vacation days for a week off of work to help serve. So we're really grateful for everyone that participated.
Is this the first time your daughter helped with kids camp?
No, second year she's helped with the kindergarten age group.
She enjoys that?
She loves it. She really, really enjoys it.
Yeah. Laura's husband, Mike, and he helped all week. And if you don't know Mike, you have to know him. He's such a gift to my soul and to this church body. But he took Vic. He's one of those that he made time in his schedule to be part of this. Yeah. And he told me, he's like, don't tell anybody how amazing this week is, because I don't want anybody to take my spot in helping. And Joshua Dukeman, another one of our amazing people in this community, he's one of our ushers, just such a servant heart. He took vacation time to be part of this weekend as well, this week. Yeah. And we're sharing how much he loves it. And so it's like a hidden thing for a lot of people. You don't realize how much life you can experience in serving the younger generation in this way.
Yeah, and we have some people like Josh and Mike and others who have done that years in a row. Several years in a row.
Exactly.
Taking this week off as part of their annual calendar to participate.
It's a staple in their calendar, which we're grateful for. So thank you to the team, those who helped make it happen. Of course, the children giving their lives to Jesus, children who already have continuing to grow in them. It was fun to have them spotlight in the weekend service as well, just through the singing and the song that was written and just all the things. It was a lot of fun. And so we continued our series in James as well. Kevin brought the message, and he talked about walking in faith. In fact, it was called Faith That Works. And so obviously the concept of good works that display the faith that you have. Yeah. And this isn't necessarily a new conversation for ECC. We've been talking around grace and faith and works and good works, and when are works appropriately added to the Christian diet. It's not a part of salvation, but it's like the short breath after salvation. All of a sudden works are incorporated. And so it's an important conversation because it's easy to get works kind of mixed up at times, where you can lead out of works thinking that good works can maintain a healthy connection with God, and that's not necessarily the case, and yet it is the byproduct of a healthy connection with God. And so, great conversation. Of course, Kevin brought some excellent illustrations. My favorite one, or at least the one that really connected to me, was when he was talking about him and Stephanie church shopping way back in the day, and ultimately made the decision that we'll go to the church that the people who attend that church most reflect the faith values we have.
Yeah.
They represent Jesus outside of the weekend service. And so that's the decision they made, which I thought was an excellent decision, catalyzing agent for a decision. But he never said what church.
Yeah, do you know which church they ended up at?
I don't know. And I'm wondering if he took the lead pastor role here because we weren't that church and you felt like we needed the help, of which I hope we're getting better. But he never said the church.
No.
And, before the podcast started, it was like the immediate thing that you and I both clued in on, like, hey, he never shared. But so I don't have an answer for you on this podcast either, though I'm sure we'll get that answer out of him shortly. I really appreciated that. Just as a display of like, hey, the tree's going to bear the fruit in keeping with who they are and what faith they have, whether they're following Jesus or not. Your fruit's going to tell you. And but I want to punt it over to you, what your reflections were, and some of the take-home applications. What are some immediate next steps for those listening, even right now, how they can be just self-observing? Am I bearing the right fruit? Am I doing the right works? How can I know? Because he talked about a deceived faith and a faith that is not dead, but is alive. So anyway, a lot of points he made. What are some of your reflections?
Yeah, I think personally, just one thing that's gone through my mind, I don't know, every so often in the last little while is the play that I've heard people do just between the word Christian and disciple. So you'll see where I'm going here.
Yeah.
But Jesus and Book of Acts, they don't talk or use the word Christian very much. They mention that some early followers of Jesus were called Christians,
Right.
either as a label or even as potentially an insult.
Right.
But the word for Jesus followers is disciple. That's our New Testament framework, not necessarily the word Christian.
Right.
And this has been going through my mind here and there because through different periods of church history or different parts of the world, you see very much at different times in different places the idea that a Christian is someone who believes something, makes mental assent to something, and therefore is going to go to heaven someday. In
Sure.
a negative way. We can reduce the word Christian to a mental assent or acknowledgement of something, and that's your ticket to heaven.
Sure.
Contrasted with the idea of a disciple. A disciple is someone whose life reflects their rabbi or their teacher or their leader. And so that's just been floating in and out of my mind every once in a while, the last several months. And then along comes our series of James, and that this message in particular hits, the whole book of James hits that, but this message in particular that when Kevin went to James 2 and also Ephesians 2, where James says, you're not saved by your faith alone, but by your works. And then Ephesians says, it is by grace you've been saved, not by works.
Right.
But Ephesians paints a picture of the salvation. Kevin compared it to ingredients in a bowl. Like you're making salvation. You have grace and faith are ingredients, but not works. You take that out. But once salvation is accomplished, you put works in to show the genuineness of your faith. And James is not contradicting that, but he's kind of going from the end towards the beginning, whereas Ephesians went from beginning towards end, that you'll see the validity of people's faith by the life change and the life transformation that takes place. And the power of a transformed life is deep in ECC's values. And so I like how Kevin kind of played on that a little
right.
bit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I like your framework you provided, Christian versus disciple.
Yeah.
I think that's helpful for maybe take a few moments to continue with that, compare and contrast. As you were talking, what came to mind was like the commandments, like you shall have no other gods before me, right? Or the idea of like casting off your idols, the idea of serving lesser idols versus serving the Lord your God with all your heart, loving him with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Using the framework again of like a disciple, what do you think about the idea that you can observe, again, going back to like self-observing, take a moment today and be like, okay, am I a disciple of things, anything?
Yeah.
Am I a disciple? Of course, we want to be a disciple of God, and you show up on a Sunday morning, you want to check that box. But okay, what about I really am into golf. To what extent am I a disciple of maybe a particular golfer or just the sport in general? And you can see the fruit of being a disciple because there's a golf club in my office right now, and I'm looking up tee times, and it's like because let me say it this way. You can observe the fruit of my life revolving around a particular thing.
Right.
Finances can be devoted. Meditation can be devoted, like, because it can occupy my mind. I'm looking to connect with other people who might be devoted to the same thing. That would be kind of the characteristic that would say you're not just a believer that golf, or let's say physical exercise, is healthy. You can know that in your mind. I could be healthy.
Yeah.
It's a completely different thing to say, well, the fruit and the characteristics of your life actually more bear out the reality. You're a disciple of that particular belief system. So we can have Christianity, you can have athletics, sports, golf, what have you. You can have Apple products or Android products. You can have, you follow what I'm getting at. Do you have any, that's kind of where my mind was going. And kind of a really healthy exercise. Again, not to say that everything other than God is an idol, but it helps you realize, okay, am I this, the way I am towards golf, am I that way towards the Lord? And to what extent is there, if I want to sit here and say I'm a disciple of Jesus, then probably the characteristics of what makes up a disciple should be observable, I would imagine. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, my mind goes, I don't know why, but having been in Asia and different places, or even friends of mine, we were coming off a beach in Hawaii, and there's a long sidewalk going to different trails in the parking lot. And as we were coming off the beach, we ran into a group of guys in full Buddhist monk dress. We were in Honolulu. And I've seen this in Asia in many places. And so my friend was the leader of the School of Missions and Evangelism. He immediately struck up a conversation with these guys, just trying to dialogue with them. And in those kind of extreme examples, you see very quickly, just by their physical appearance, shaved head, big prayer beads, this big cloak. They were from Laotian Buddhist monks. You see they are disciples of something. You see it very much on the outward. Like, it's very, very apparent.
Yep.
They are disciples of their teacher or leader. And so that is striking on the outside. And I think where we want to go, where we want to lead, is obviously external things are not necessarily what we're going for. We don't want to just look good on the outside and do nice things, but a congruence, if that's the right word, from the transformation that happens by faith on the inside gradually grows out and results in differences. So I think that's where my mind goes, is it starts with the faith on the inside and what the grace of God does to us, and then it goes outside. So we don't just do a work because it's the right thing to do, or it's something I need to check off the list to make Jesus happy, but there is a transformation that's taking place on the inside, and outside kind of it all falls in line. And so you can see the discipleship of Jesus ruling your heart evidenced in all areas of life. And you can see what is, as you're saying, am I a disciple of of golf or a disciple of social media, or
Right.
what is having that influence on the inside that is apparent by what's on the outside. Right? So is Jesus ruling so that everything I'm doing, you can look at my life and see what's ruling on the inside is apparent on the outside. So
how quick...
Yeah. I don't know if that hit exactly what you were
No, I
thinking.
appreciate everything you're saying. It stirs up this next question, which is you're talking about this transformational thing that's taking place inside to the outside. Jesus saying you judge a tree by its fruit.
Yeah.
And so how quickly of a transformation are we talking about, though? Like, should it be like 12 hours from now? I pray that prayer. Good. And what about 2 months? Like, is there an expected timeline that would be appropriate to hope or expect for? Is God going to show up and zap me?
Yeah.
And maybe he did that 2 years ago, but I've been praying about this other thing and he hasn't zapped me since. And so that's the expectation that I either heard somebody else testify of or my experience.
Yeah.
And I want to impose that on the rest of my transformational journey, but it seems to not.
Yeah.
And this is actually coming out from a conversation that I would have had with a gentleman from the church about, 4 weeks ago, after one of our services. And he came up and he said, essentially, this is my words, of course, I'm not going to be able to quote him perfectly, said, I've been praying this way for years.
Yeah.
And I'm still dealing with the same thing.
Yeah.
And so essentially, what does that say about me then is really where he was coming from. What is that saying about me? Is my faith not real? Is my desire for transformation off? Am I missing it? How am I missing it? How would I know if I'm missing it? Except to look at it and say, I'm still the same way. Now, I'd push back on that personally. But that's the struggle I know that people can have, which is like, man, I want to have faith. I don't want to have dead faith, but I've been believing for this for what seems like a long time. And it's what help make it make sense kind of thing. And, this can be a common thing I think many people can navigate and deal with. And so that's what kind of stirs up in me on this topic of faith, because I don't disagree with anything shared, but my heart kind of aches for the conversations I've had with people who are like, hey, I love everything that's written there, but like, here's my personal situation, and I'm doing my best to have an alive faith and take the steps, and I'm still struggling.
Yeah.
So anyway, I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my thoughts go to, the fact that I'm a dad. I have 4 kids, and all 4 kids are unique. So, yes, we are growing in our faith. Yes, we're following the Lord, and some people are seeing victory in one area, and the person in the seat next to them is applying the same faith and not seeing the same breakthrough. Or as you mentioned, I see growth in this one area, but I'm still praying the same prayers in that area. My mind goes to the fact that we're all unique people. My firstborn was an amazing sleeper. Like, she slept through the night, like 8-9 weeks in, took 3 naps a day for a long time.
That was your firstborn?
Yeah.
That set you up, didn't it?
Yeah, I took a nap every afternoon until she was like 6 or 7 years old.
Yeah, ready to write the book.
And so you're like, this parenting thing is so easy. What, do you have a problem with sleeping? And then my next one came along and was much different. Not horrible, but it was a lot more work. Yeah. And then I have a daughter who has a certain personality. She's feisty. Her emotions always go up. So there are things that some kids naturally take to things, and other things will always be a struggle. Certain behaviors will always pop up among certain ones of my kids, whereas it's not the other. So God is our Father, and He's parenting us. This life of transformation that we're talking about doesn't happen in a sort of, machine transaction. Yes, it's God the Father parenting us. So each child is different. That sounds trite to say to a certain extent, but God is parenting each of us. And so I've heard testimonies from my friends, people I know. Man, I struggled with partying and drinking, and I had an encounter with God in a moment that lasted 20 minutes, an hour.
Right.
And I never craved alcohol or drugs since that day. Boom, a miraculous deliverance. And I have other friends that I know who I quit, but it's been tempting and it's been struggle and it's been hard for years. So how God dealt with one versus the other, where one seems to get easy victory, the other has a much more difficult process. There's a certain amount of surrender that has to take place in faith.
Okay.
That God knows best, and God is fathering me and transforming me in a way that won't be like any other kid, because I'm a unique child of God. So that doesn't solve the whole equation, but that's one element that I have seen at work in discipling groups of people. Like there's 20, 25 people in a small group, or 8 people over here, and seeing that breakthrough for one that comes quick and, in the this kind of moment, and others that, just plod away, if that's the right word, just faithful obedience, but the struggle's still there.
And this struggle is actually universal as well.
Of course.
Everybody's got theirs. And in keeping with James chapter 1, verse 3, consider it all joy when you face various trials, for the testing of your faith produces endurance, and let endurance have its perfect result, that you can be perfect, complete, lacking in nothing. Everybody would be like, I want to be perfect, complete, lacking in nothing, like completely whole. I want the faith that I maintain to be fully in keeping and without any dissonance, that my actions beautifully and perfectly reflect the faith that I maintain, and the struggle is gone. I want to be there. That's where I want to be. Well, the testing of your faith is actually part of moving the needle on that. And I remember, this is probably a year ago, Kevin was preaching and he talked about those miraculous moment, God zaps you moment. God does that to establish faith. And then he had a second point to it, and I don't recall exactly what that was, and I feel very upset about that. But where I wanted to go, and I'm going to guess at what he said, is the moments where you're fighting to maintain, or to fight for your faith, or to fight for victory, as opposed to him just showing up and giving it to you. The first one establishes a faith that God is who he says he is. He's miraculous. He's powerful. The second one is a faith journey of you choosing to maintain faith in that reality. And James 1, the testing of your faith with the right, that's a perspective thing. Romans 12:2, you're transformed by the renewing of your mind, right? So you want transformation? Well, one of the ways you get there, the ways, you got to think like Jesus thinks. And James gives us a spotlight into, consider it all joy when you face trials. Consider it joy when your faith is tested. Is what we're concluding here, because the result of it is an endurance, is a strengthening, is a perfection of your connection to the Lord. There's this growth. And so it's beautiful when he shows up and zaps you, but there's actually a joy that you can draw from when you have to fight for it. There's actually something to be joyful about in that season. And man, that's how do I say it? Not the easiest thing to pause and it's not like you need to start laughing. It's like, oh great, I just lost my house, right? Ha ha ha, this is the best day ever. Make it again. What are you talking about? Consider it joy, right? But there is something to the testing of your faith and how that process is actually something that God can be in for the sake of growing you in your Christ-likeness. Do you have thoughts on this?
There's the intervention in the circumstance. And we pray for God to intervene in our circumstance, whether that's a sickness you're struggling with, a relationship, outside circumstance, addiction, or a sinful pattern you're trying to overcome. We pray for breakthrough in the circumstance, and it's wonderful when we have those moments where God comes and breaks those. But within the battle, there was a teacher, prophetic type preacher who talked about an upgrade when I'm in the battle and I'm in the striving, the testing of your faith, you can pray, God, what revelation of you do I need right now that will give me an upgrade in grace to carry through this? So keep praying for the breakthrough, but there's an upgrade. That's the word he used, an upgrade in your faith through a revelation of who God is. What reveal to me something about you and your kingdom that increases the grace that I have to walk through this. And someone talked about the difference in military strategy, I believe it was, for gaining ground and keeping ground. And that's, there's two different nuances to faith when you're taking ground, but then, anchoring down and keeping the ground that you just gained so that you don't retreat back. There's different actions of renewing the mind and disciplines of faith. And all of this is happening all at different times in different ways.
Oh, sure.
It's not so black and white.
No, it's not.
You're kind of just walking that through.
Yeah. So obviously, we could talk at length on the topic of faith. Books have been written for sure. It does remind me what you just shared there of one of his last points where he talks about having dynamic faith, but he said a faith that steps out. And now there's always one step. Like, what's the next step?
Yeah.
And for those who are maybe listening to this and thinking, man, I've been in a journey of faith. And as we just discussed, I've been fighting and battling to maintain. But man, this is wearing long and I'm becoming exhausted, to pause and say, God, what's the one thing I need to know about you right now?
Yeah.
What's the one truth? What's the next step that I need? What do I need from you that I can take the next step? And feel like I'm able to maintain or even gain ground in my faith in this area. And just a grace for unrelenting faith. I'm going to keep on keeping on, and I'm not going to stop some type of forward progress. And I love that posture you just highlighted, which is the prayer, God, what do I need to see in you right now? Because sometimes we can get the sword of the Spirit, waving the sword around, saying, well, God is this, and God is this, and I know this to be true, and there's a promise, but then pausing and saying, God, what weapon do you want to equip me with for this season that I can fight with? So good. Appreciate your time, David, today. Appreciate having you on. And for those listening, thanks so much for being on the podcast. That's all the time we have for today. We're going to be continuing, of course, the series in James. Kevin is bringing the message again this weekend. And looking forward to worshiping the Lord with you as well. And, of course, picking up in the podcast next week. And, is there anything that we want to share before
Tuesday night?
Oh, yes. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah. Tuesday night, corporate prayer for ECC, 7 p.m., I believe, over at Gateway. So this coming Tuesday, tomorrow.
Yes, that's correct.
Prayer. And be watching for future announcements as we are looking to try and continue ways to gather the body just for the sake of prayer and pursuing the words of the Lord that God has spoken to us as a community.
Yeah, in a very corporate sense, this faith that we're talking about, just really rallying around prayer and intercession. So Tuesday night, Gateway House of Prayer, 7 p.m. Look forward to being with you there. And until next week, God bless.
Hey, thanks again for joining us today. We hope that you've been encouraged by listening. You can listen to previous episodes, find additional resources, and of course, learn more about us at EphphatahCommunityChurch.com.